to answer your question, what should we really know when purchasing a property is taking it back to what a real estate agent is. Now, when you go to sell your property, you want to use a real estate agent because we have assets, whether they're $300,000 or $3 million. We entrust an agent, a sales agent, to sell the property. Whereas when we go to buy a property, everyone has the Australian dream to get out there and do it on their own. So they don't think twice about, again, going back to that example, spending millions of dollars without actually having someone potentially holding their hand and taking them through the whole process. So for me, it's really important to know that there are experts out there like myself, who's a buyer's agent, who actually helps people to buy a property.
Welcome to Conversations with Faye. Today we're delving into a topic that touches so many of us. It is the property puzzle: finance, mortgages, and legal made simple. Buying a home or investing in a property is one of life's biggest decisions, and often one of the most confusing. So today we are breaking it all down with three incredible experts who will help make sense of it all. Joining me today is Obu Ramaraj, and Obu is a financial broker, a money management expert, and an author who helps people navigate the lending world with clarity and confidence. My second guest, Dianna Jacobsen, the founder of Shine It Business, Shine It Leadership, and Shine It Agribusiness. She's a finance specialist who simplifies money matters and empowers smarter financial decisions. And my third guest, Dean Daskalou, a buyer's agent and advocate who makes sure buyers make informed decisions and avoid costly mistakes in the competitive property market. Welcome to the show, my beautiful guests, and you're going to create magic for those people out there. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, what we're going to be talking about today is looking at the real estate industry and having a better understanding of how it works and what the ins and outs of it are, so that we know as humans, individuals out there that may want to buy a property, may want to sell a property, they need to have money management, which Dianna can help you with, and Obu, who really deals with mortgages and helping people understand how they can manage their money as well, so that they can get their deposit together, and she will support them there. So my question is, and any of you can start the conversation, what is it that is really, no, I'll aim it at you, Dee. What is it that really is important that we should know as individuals when we're purchasing a property?
Thank you, and it's great to be here as well. I think to answer your question, what should we really know when purchasing a property is taking it back to what a real estate agent is. Now, when you go to sell your property, you want to use a real estate agent because we have assets, whether they're $300,000 or $3 million. We entrust an agent, a sales agent, to sell the property. Whereas when we go to buy a property, everyone has the Australian dream to get out there and do it on their own. So they don't think twice about, again, going back to that example, spending millions of dollars without actually having someone potentially holding their hand and taking them through the whole process. So for me, it's really important to know that there are experts out there like myself, who's a buyer's agent, who actually helps people to buy a property. Because when you deal with a real estate agent, they've sold many properties before, and some people may have only bought one or two or three properties, or they could be doing it for the first time. So I think from my perspective, to be there to help them and be on their side is really important, because it's going to be one of, if not the biggest expense that they will actually encounter in their life. And if they've got someone like myself on the buying side, and obviously having a great team around them, like a mortgage broker, an accountant, and a legal team, but going back to the buyer's agent side, I'm there helping people, and it's really important because then they can ask questions, and if I don't know the answer, I can find out the answer. So having a buyer's agent starting the process and helping you from the start to finish. And it's not just about finding something that, is 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms, but actually what do people want? Do they want to be close to schools? Do they want to be close to amenities? Do they want to be away from, I've got a client who wants to be away from all that and they want to be in the country and live on acreage. So it's specific for everybody. I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, and look, when we're looking at all these things, there's so many bits of information that we don't know when we're going to look at a property or we're going to buy a property. And it's all about, you've got to have the money ready to go. You've got to understand how to manage that money and be, not just have the real estate agent, which is the person that offers up the property or is selling the property or whatever, but the buyer's agent or the buyer's advocate behind the scenes who will give you the insights into what goes on with when you're selling your property privately or you're going to auction. They're 2 totally different things. You go into different seasons. You've got to know the market to know where you're going to sell or how you're going to sell, whether it's an auction or whether it's privately. You've got to understand the ins and outs of the contracts. And Obu, you would understand the ins and outs of contracts because you would be working with people. Would you like to comment on any of that?
When it comes to finance, I think everybody wants a 3 million property. Nobody wants to buy a $500,000 property. So I guess it's my job to sort of understand what actually people want, just like Dean said, but also bring them to reality to say, this is what you probably should be looking based on what you can afford. Many times people come to me with big dreams, and I'm sort of like the parent who says, no, that's not possible, I guess. Because in actuality, people, yes, a house is important, but that shouldn't stop living their life. Like, people should be able to enjoy the house that they're buying. So that's sort of where I come in and make sure that I'm helping them with their dream, but also making sure that it is actually what they should be having.
Reality. Yes. And Diana, what you do is, even before they think about buying a property, you can sit down and have that conversation and look at where their money's going and teach them how to actually play with their money properly.
Yeah, and like both of what you've said is really important because people don't buy and sell houses often, generally, as Dean alluded to. And we see people make mistakes because they're not familiar with that area, with perhaps permits or zonings or, future plans for that particular area. By having someone that's an expert in that field, they know what questions to ask. So that's often a big leakage of money because it was a great idea at the time on the surface and we forgot to ask all the other stuff because we didn't even know about it. And further to Obu's point as well, sometimes we see people being able to borrow large amounts of money, but it's really not a good idea. And then their lives are so stressful because if someone gets sick or something breaks down or anything, there's no leeway in that. And I think this is where banks have recognised this over the last few years and, tried to change the rules a little bit. They've kind of hit the mark in some regards and missed it in others. I think we probably all see that from experience. But the idea is to try to stop people from borrowing beyond their means and therefore making their lives really difficult and that of their lenders. But some of the things that they don't think about is there might be the cost of a property, but then there's often lots of costs associated with that, whether it's getting the yard done or the relocation or other permits and things like that. Stamp duty is one that people often don't think about. It's got to be paid. It's not something you can lend for, and it's usually a fairly hefty amount. And so that's where you need to be working with that solicitor. We do a lot of real estate work from a taxation planning perspective, whether that's residential, commercial or rural and farmland. So I have a solicitor that travels with me as we travel around the country for this. So, stamp duty is super important. Conveyancing and title searches and legal fees is, a lesser amount, but you still need to know these things up front because often if people have borrowed to the max and they haven't got any
Consider the other things.
Any other space, there's always lots of things after the event that come into play. It could be that we move in, but we decide we really hated the colour or something. And another thing that we talk about with people is, depending on the nature of the property in your hands, whether you're buying or selling, but things like capital gains tax, GST, and how that fits within the tax threshold of what they're doing with it. So if it's a commercial place or if it's a holiday house, as to what that tax treatment is. And I do not recommend anyone tries to Google to decide that for themselves.
Well, it's not
possible.
Well, that's why we're here talking about this today, because there are so many things, hidden things that we're not aware of that need to be made aware of. And it's people like you, but you three, that bring that to the table when they're having a conversation about property, buying, selling, thinking about it, learning about it. I think we need to learn about it first before we actually go and step into purchasing a property.
One of the things I often say to people, Faye, is stay in your lane. Yeah. And you've probably been in that space, because they'll hear something, similar to what you said, from a friend or another, mum at school or a bloke at the footy, all that stuff.
Barbecue.
Yes, social stuff, because it's and what might be true for one person, a different person in that same scenario might have a different tax treatment, different borrowing, obviously. So you cannot say, my mate at the footy told me this, so therefore it must be true. But we find that a lot.
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
A friend said, I can get X rate. I need the same rate. I'm like, okay, how much have they borrowed? I'm like, I don't know, but I want the same rate. So it's very, very important for us to understand what it is. And just adding on to what Diana mentioned before, like the hidden costs. People always come to me and say, I'm renting, that's dead money. I might as well buy a property. I'm like, have you considered, for example, like if a light bulb goes off, for example, you're not trying to replace it, but in your house, let's say the hot water system goes off, that's a cost to you. So you need to be aware of all the hidden costs.
Yeah, and there are so many hidden costs. I mean, you purchase a property, you've got rates and taxes, land tax, insurances, you've got water, you've got power, you've got gas, and that's just the things, the surface level things that we're kind of aware about. But all those other things like the repairs, the maintenance, what's the cost of all that?
Look, I actually make sure that all my clients are at least offered a building and pest inspection, because when we actually purchase a property, again, like what we said before, no matter what the cost is, the cost to maintain it can be extraordinarily high if we do find that there's, termites or, it's happened before where, it's been structurally unsound. So what is it going to cost to fix? And going back to the point we talked about renting or buying, when you rent, it's not I don't personally think it's dead money, because unless you're not doing anything else with your money and just enjoying it, which is great, that you still need a bit of a plan. And we talk about rent vesting. I like that term, but it just means that if you're renting, make sure you do something else with your money. But, again, what we talked about, if the light goes off, you can actually call someone, they'll come and fix it for you, or the hot water doesn't work. You don't incur all those costs. The landlord does. The landlord, sometimes you get a bit of a, the stigma of landlords being in their ivory tower. I don't think that that's exact on every single occasion, because they're doing their best to provide, housing for people as well.
Quality, yes.
Which they say there's a shortage of. But when you're renting, and as you said, Dean, make sure you're doing something else with the money that you're not using in the rental side of things, and that could be, having a better life, going on holiday, or just saving it up to maybe buy a property down the track. And
it's often something I suggest when people are moving to a new area and they're not really sure about it, is to rent for 6 months to get a bit of a sense of that area, and if it's the right fit for your family, for your kids' activities and so on. Or even just when you've sold, I've got a client at the moment and it's a really big decision, and the property's not suitable for her anymore, but she doesn't know what next. And I said, well, just find somewhere and rent for a little while. Don't make big decisions that are very expensive and like very mentally taxing, just be kind to yourself for a little while. And I think that's where rentals can really serve
Get a feel.
well, just to chill for a bit and find your
Cost to
feet.
buy and sell. And again, as I said, with stamp duty there, if you're talking $1 million property, you're talking $50,000-$60,000 if you do that 2 or 3 times. And it's just...
If it's a bad decision.
It is,
Yeah.
and it happens a lot.
That's right. Whereas if you're just renting, you can,
Yeah.
it's okay.
So, if you're not familiar with a place and you move in and you rent, and you can get a feel for the place and say, yes, it is for me, or no, it's not. And I had a conversation with someone about sea change and tree change, and it's all about going into that area and deciding whether you've got the facilities there that you want. If you've got a car that needs to be repaired, how far do you have to travel to get that car repaired? Are there good doctor's services, emergency services? Are there sporting facilities? What kind of shops and things that are available? What kind of schools are available? All those sorts of things that you need to be aware of. Young people who have families want to move closer to schools, but the sea change and tree change people sometimes often make that big mistake, sell up and move to a place because they've been there on holiday, but not live there for a period of time. And so therefore their mistake is, I don't like this. There's a farm across the road and the cows make too much noise, and the machinery that goes up and down the paddocks and things like this. So, you've got to be aware, where are you living? Are you living on a main road where there's constant traffic? Are you living near parks and waterways or whatever? Wherever you're living, you need to know that it's the right space for you.
We see this a lot in rural areas, and we saw it a lot when people did the exodus from the cities, because they'd go to live in rural areas. And even when we see people move out of the bigger rural towns to more little outlying places, generally the trend is in a year or two they'll move back, because they're so used to being close to whatever facilities they use, whether it's kids' activities or whether it's restaurants or so on, that they find themselves running in and out rather than building a new lifestyle. And we certainly saw this with the exodus from the cities to the rural areas, that a lot of people are moving back because they're just not used to being that far from the facilities or
Everything.
restaurants or whatever it is that they're used to, whereas country people are quite used to that. So exactly what you're saying, you've got to kind of try it for a little while to see whether it's just a nice holiday destination or whether it's going to be long-term, or if it's far away from family. Sometimes that's an issue as well.
Yeah.
Due diligence, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's doing your research, but also knowing the people that you can have the conversation with, that you can trust. And trust is a big thing, because, you can go to real estate agents, and I don't have anything against real estate agents. They do a job, and they've got a job to do. But then you've got your buyers agents and advocates, and they delve into it a little bit more and support the person who's either buying or selling, and get them to understand what they need to know, how much it's going to cost. Be aware when I've had many a conversation about auctions and what you can be aware of and what happens in an auction. So if I ever go to an auction now, I just stand there. I like watching auctions because they're really interesting.
Don't scratch your nose or anything.
Oh, no.
It's always good to spend other people's money.
Oh, yeah, always good to spend other people's money. But it's really interesting how it works. Yeah. And when you can delve into that and have an understanding, and you've got someone by your side to be able to support you and say, no, just wait, or let it go, or, you're watching, is very interesting. And I find all this very intriguing.
There are also different perspectives when you talk about the buyer's agent or the real estate agent that's selling. They're coming from different perspectives in that particular engagement.
Yeah.
So there's going to be different questions to ask, and depending on who you're acting for as the buyer or as the vendor, their own situations will be different in every scenario. So you need to be basing it.
The transaction is, I'm doing my best to get the lowest possible price for my client. I mean, whether it's an investment property or owner occupied, they're forever home. And you've got the real estate agent who at the front, he's trying to, oh, look, it's only another coffee and what's another $5,000? Well, $5,000 is $5,000. That's how much it is. So I'm doing my comparables first to understand exactly that, okay, I want to make sure that we're not overspending, but there's also that emotional cost at the end of the day. Yes. Whatever that amount is worth, I'll say to the person, okay, well, we know it's worth X amount, but it could be X amount plus another $10,000 that they know that they can walk away from. And the last thing I want to do at an auction is be talking to my client, can we do a little bit more? No, we know that beforehand. We've got a plan.
And you're not emotional.
And I'm not emotional.
So it's not impulsive.
Don't get me wrong, the heart rate's going underneath.
Yes,
the
but
exterior. But
it's not your forever house.
No, that's right. We've gone through the whole process, and we talked about due diligence. We've gone and look whether we most probably had a building in Pest. We've had the contract read, making sure that everything's ticked off. But once you get to that stage where you miss out, well, at least you know that you've done everything you can to mitigate overspending, and that's the key. Because everyone said, "Oh, how much can you save me?" I said, "Well, I'm going to save you sometimes from yourself. I'm going to save you from overspending, and that's the key to having a good buyer's agent."
Yeah.
To be honest.
And you said emotion. Emotion is the thing that happens when you're going to buy a property. You'll go in and look. And I looked at this property just recently, and it is absolutely magical. And the garage is the bit that I want. I'm not really interested. Well, I could live in the house, but it's far too big for me. But the garage is the thing that intrigues me, because it'd be a perfect place for me to do all my recording, and it'd be the perfect studio. And I imagine that. And you look at the house and you go, wow, wow, wow. And the wow factor is so overwhelming, but the price is so overwhelming that you look at it and you think, okay, I've had a look. I really enjoyed the walk through the place. And you walk away from it because you know that you don't have the funds to buy it.
I think it's much easier when it's way outside your boundaries than if it's a little bit outside your boundaries, because that's when it's easy to go, oh, here's my edge, but I could just go to here and I could just go to here, because then there's smaller bites, and suddenly you find yourself, further than you thought.
Every wow was an extra $10,000.
Yeah.
Time you think of something like that.
Yeah.
We can get the funding for sure. Can you really afford?
And this
Comfortably.
Comfortably, exactly.
And this is the thing, Obu, you with the experience and everything that you have working with people, working with your clients, is you talk to them about how much money, so you look at their budget and you do all that sort of thing, as Dianna does as well. But you delve into that and you get them on a plan to take them on a journey to understand that they need this before they can have that.
That's right. Sometimes I work with my clients to make sure, this is they think, mostly when people say this is my budget, that's actually not their budget. So I have to work with them to actually have a look at their documents and say, you mentioned this is what you're spending every month. So where's the rest of the money? So when I break it down like that, people understand, okay, they're actually spending more than what they think they're spending. So I guess that's the first step for me. But also when I break it down like that, and then they had their savings to put towards the house, that's when they realize, okay, with this much money, this is what I can buy. And also preparing, like sometimes, you have shortfalls in your purchase. Like recently I had the client where the property they've overpaid basically. Luckily they are not borrowing a very high.
Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. Changing lives, one conversation at a time.